Greetings everybody, and welcome to a special preview episode of my new modded Minecraft Let's Play series, Industria Australis. Industria Australis is a combination of a challenge and a mod pack, with the mods specially chosen to suit the challenge. I will be discussing the challenge and the mod pack, starting with the challenge. The core of the Industria Australis challenge is a challenge based on the Refugee to Region challenge that may be found on the Feed the Beast forum. There will be a link in the description of this video and in the description of each episode of Industria Australis. The Refugee to Region challenge is a tier-based system that expands the opportunities in each successive stage. Initially, only the most basic materials are usable, but by the end of the challenge, I will have all manner of superpowers developed over the course of the series. In addition to the normal rules, the challenge supports what is called the Rule of Cool. This rule allows me to add any rule or modify or delete any official rule so long as I consider the modified rule to be cool. When I explain the rules of cool, I will explain what I mean when I say cool. As I explain the challenge, I will delineate those rules that are official and those rules that I have modified pursuant to the rule of cool. Note that the rule of cool allows me to adjust the rules mid-challenge should the need arise. The official challenge has 9 stages. However, in order to ensure an interesting early game and taking into account the options that open up in the mid-game once redstone becomes available, I will be compressing the stages to the following 7. 1. The official challenge lists dirt, wood, and stone stages separately. For the reasons just given, I will be combining these 3 stages. In this combined stage, which I will refer to as the Stone Hamlet stage, I will have access to wood and stone materials, clay, and other related simple materials. Notably, I will not have access to any sort of metal. Mining will be allowed, and in fact it will be required for advancement, but there is nothing I can do with the ores at this stage. This stage will be marked by the initial construction of my capital, and the establishment of the initial mining and farming outposts. After the Stone Hamlet stage comes the Iron Village stage. This stage allows the use of metals and requires expansion of my capital and the set of outposts. This stage will also show the earliest industrial development, including the use of pistons. However, the level of industrialization will be very low compared to the next stage. Note that pistons and sticky pistons are the only allowed uses of redstone in this stage. The Gold City stage gives rise to the most interesting new options as all metals, redstone, and lapis become available. This is also the point where the first tentative explorations of the Nether will take place. The Lapis Metropolis stage permits the remaining materials, excluding draconium, and exposes the corresponding options. This stage will feature significant exploration and settlement of the Nether, in addition to further expansion in the overworld. The Emerald Capital stage will feature the end, including a battle against the Ender Dragon. The Diamond Kingdom stage will be defined by the near finalization of technology and magic in preparation for the endgame. The Draconic Imperium will feature Draconic Evolution and will be defined by one or more fights against Chaos Dragons. The base challenge refers to this stage as the Nether Star Imperium. Challenge requirements. Each stage will require some combination of the following: housing for residents, commercial areas, industrial areas appropriate for the given stage, updates to the Royal Palace, aka my base, new and updated civic structures including but not limited to civic government buildings, parks and plazas, transportation networks, schools, universities, and other educational structures, hospitals and other health-related buildings, and museums. Outposts, including but not limited to the following: mining, farming, ranching, magic research, industrial research, security/military, forestry, and apiary. The specific combination required will be determined at the start of each stage, and I will be maintaining a project board to keep track of the requirements for the stage. In addition to the staging changes I've already mentioned, I have some additional rules of cool that are designed to make the game more interesting. First is the anti-teleportation rule. This rule has 2 parts. The first part is an absolute prohibition on teleportation between 2 points in the same dimension. The second part states that within any dimension there may be a single area, which must fit within a cube 40 blocks per side, which must include all interdimensional transport to or from that dimension. This second rule has 2 exceptions. The first corresponds to the vanilla end portal, This exception exists because the location of this portal will not be discovered until the Emerald Capital stage, later than the development of nether bases in the Lapis Metropolis stage. The other exception relates to the standard method for reaching the Tropicraft dimension, which requires access to a beach at sunset. This exception will expire once a more permanent method of traveling between the two dimensions is developed, and will only ever apply to travel to the Tropicraft dimension. This rule is intended to ensure the development of transportation networks, particularly in the overworld. Second is the biome rule. This rule also has two parts. The first part relates to trees, bees, and other things possessing native biomes, and states that such things may only be cultivated in their respective native biomes. For the purposes of this part of the rule, acacia trees are considered native only to the savanna biome. The second part relates to farms and ranches and restricts them to plains-like and savanna biomes. The purpose of this rule is to limit the development of unnatural farm configurations. Finally, I have two rules related to outposts and cities. The first is that any new city must be founded at least 250 blocks from the nearest point of any outpost, and at least 1 kilometer from the nearest point of any city. Certain natural obstacles, such as rivers, oceans, and sheer cliffs, count as the required distance for the purpose of this rule. The second handles cases where a city expands in such a way as to absorb an outpost. If the outpost may safely and effectively be incorporated into the city, the outpost becomes a district of the city. If the outpost cannot be incorporated into the city without sacrificing its functionality or safety, the outpost is abandoned, and the stage cannot be completed until I rebuild the outpost elsewhere. In order to make the challenge interesting, I have set up a mod pack and established certain rules for the inclusion of mods. I will explain the mods I included in this challenge, as well as justify certain notable omissions. The main rule for mods is that a mod must either have significant, interesting, and unique functionality, or it has to fill in a critical gap in order to be eligible for inclusion. Additionally, a mod must not be overpowered compared to the stage in which it will become available and the rest of the pack. Allow me to introduce the mod pack. We begin with the immersive family of mods. This will be my primary mid-game set of technical mods. It includes the core technical mod Immersive Engineering, Immersive Petroleum, which adds petroleum-related machinery, a distiller and a pump jack in particular. Immersive Tech adds steam to the Immersive Engineering system and related machines to that. And finally, Immersive Railroading, which adds trains and the machines necessary for their maintenance. Suffice to say, Immersive Railroading is going to feature pretty heavily once it becomes available. The other main technical mod is Mechanism, which formally is divided into 3 parts, but it's really just one mod. Mechanism will play more of a role later on in the game. For power generation, I have additionally Extreme Reactors, which can generate significant amounts of power given the right resources. This will be a mid to late game mod. I have Open Computers, which adds programmable computers, as well as a few add-ons. Actually Computers, which integrates Open Computers with Actually Additions. Open Glasses gives me augmented reality features. Open Computers Sensors gives me sensors that allow me to get information about the surrounding world. And Open Computers XNet Driver gives me XNet integration for Open Computers. I also have Environmental Tech and 2 related mods, Environmental Materials and ET Lunar. Environmental Tech adds Void Ore Miners. These will be pretty late in the game, let me make that clear. Environmental Materials adds certain aesthetic materials coming from the Void Miners. And ET Lunar gives me night-based counterparts to the solar panels in Environmental Tech. In addition to the aforementioned technical mods, I also have Actually Additions, Dark Utilities, Draconic Evolution, Open Blocks, Redstone Paste, and RF Tools as technical mods. The set of magic mods is substantially shorter. I have Blood Magic Alchemical Wizardry, I have Botania, and I have Thumbcraft. And that's it. That's all the magic mods I'll be using. This is going to be pretty tech heavy. For agriculture and beekeeping, I have Appleskin, which displays additional information relating to food values. I have Forestry, which, in addition to adding bees and the concomitant support structures, also adds certain multi-block and a handful of non-multi-block farm structures. I'll be making more use of these in the mid-game. In addition to Forestry, I have Gendustry, Benny's Mods, More Bees, Magic Bees, and Career Bees. Gendustry adds machines that simplify the genetic manipulation of bees. Benny's Mods, in addition to adding a number of new bee, tree, and butterfly species, also adds a number of machines that can be used for genetic manipulation. More Bees, Magic Bees, and Career Bees all add additional types of bees. Details of the bees added by these mods will be revealed at the appropriate time in the series. Next up is Cooking for Blockheads, which adds a kitchen structure to support food processing. This will be especially useful in the early to mid game. Hunger Overhaul is designed to make hunger a little bit more of a challenge. Industrial Foregoing adds a wide, and I do mean wide, variety of agricultural support machines. Yes, that mod adds machines that don't strictly qualify as agricultural, but because most of what it does relates to farming and ranching, it goes here. Mob Grinding Utils adds mob manipulation and grinding blocks. Mystical Agriculture and its add-on Mystical Agriditions adds seeds that produce many different types of resources. Pam's Harvest Craft adds a number of new crop types, a number of fruiting trees, and a wide variety of new foods that I can eat. Spice of Life Carrot Edition is a mod that encourages consumption of different types of food without giving me a malice for not diversifying. And finally, Woot is a mod that adds customizable mob loot generation structures. For transportation and dimension mods, in addition to the earlier mentioned industrial railroading, I have Asticore, which is a mod that adds horse carts. I have Natura, which adds spice to the world generation. RF Tools Dimensions allows me to create custom dimensions that I can travel to over the course of the series. Signals gives me the ability to control trains. I have not, let me make clear, tested this one with industrial railroading. So there will be a degree of experimentation of signals and industrial railroading over the course of the series. I do apologize for that in advance. Streams adds realistic streams to the world. And yes, these streams count as rivers. The Twilight Forest adds a dimension with special bosses and resources. Tropicraft adds a tropical dimension. And Viascraft adds customizable airships to the game. I have a number of mods that are designed either to give me more aesthetic options or to support my constructions. There's Better Builder's Wands, which adds wands to facilitate construction on large areas. Bibliocraft adds bookcases, shelves, display cases, and other assorted aesthetic and functional items. Chisel adds decorative blocks, and particularly decorative alternatives to a lot of existing blocks. Decocraft gives me a broad range of decorative objects. Exchangers allows me to exchange one type of block for another at the cost of energy. Malice's Doors adds, decorative doors. Quark adds variants for vanilla blocks and other special resources. And X-Tones adds blocks with a more futuristic look and feel. For storage, I have Colossal Chests, which adds multi-block chests. Ender Tanks, which provides liquid storage and teleportation. Multi-storage, which adds multiple types of chests, including an Ender Chest, which allows me to do item teleportation. Storage Drawers gives me the option to store in a compact space large amounts of selected, commonly obtained and used items. And XNet allows me to set up a custom storage network. It is XNet that I will principally be using for my auto sorting system later on in the series. There are two mods that I use to populate the world to make it look less empty. The first is custom NPCs, which allows the on-demand addition of NPCs. And there's Millénaire, which adds NPC villages that develop over time and can trade with the player and to an extent with each other. I do have just enough items and 4 add-ons for it. One provides Pam's Harvestcraft integration, one provides bee tree and butterfly breeding integration, one adds support for certain mods and additional information for tooltips, and one adds limited support for immersive petroleum. For miscellaneous mods, I have baubles, which add inventory slots for various baubles. I have chicken chunks for chunk loading. I have clay bucket, which allows me to make buckets out of clay, useful in the Stone Hamlet stage. COFH Core is a library that also adds a number of enchantments to the game. COFH World adds modified ore spawning, and this is going to require a little more explanation than most of the miscellaneous mods because I am doing very customized ore spawning in this series. In a normal world, your ores spawn in small but very frequent clusters, so you can mine down pretty much anywhere and be reasonably assured of getting a cluster of the resource you're looking for without too much difficulty. That kind of defeats the purpose of setting up a mining outpost. If I can mine anywhere, I can mine near the capital, I can mine 1,000 blocks to the east, I can mine 1,000 blocks to the north. That was not what I wanted for this series. So I used COFH World to modify the ore spawning so that ores spawn instead in massive but very infrequent veins. When I say infrequent, I mean that within a square, 1,000 blocks on a side, I statistically do not expect to find more than one vein of a given type of ore. That, of course, means I'm going to have to travel a bit to find something worth mining. It also means that when I do find something worth mining, it's worth my while to set up a mining outpost. Back to the mod list. Craft Tweaker 2 allows me to add certain recipes to the game. I'll be using this to add the ones needed for custom NPCs and an early game recipe for the saddle. Fast leaf decay makes leaves decay faster when the trees that generated them are cut down, and by faster I mean almost instantaneously. The gravestone mod adds a gravestone that gets populated with the items that I have when I die. Journey map adds an advanced in-game map. Mouse tweaks adds new functionality to the mouse in various inventory screens. I have multi-shot, which I'll be using to take most of the time lapses for this series. Open modular passive defense gives me passive defense structure blocks. Its counterpart, open modular turrets, allows me to set up more active defense systems, particularly useful for the military outposts later on in the series. Ore excavation allows bulk harvesting / excavation of almost any block. The one probe gives me block information in my graphical interface. Tip the scales allows me to make the interface a reasonable size for my display. Torcherino adds torches that affect the speed of machines. Suffice it to say, I'll be using these with caution. And Torchmaster adds a torch that blocks hostile mobs. There are other mods in the mod pack, but they are generally library mods that don't have a direct impact on gameplay. As far as the mods I left out, the most obvious omission is anything in the thermal classification, thermal expansion, thermodynamics. At the end of the day, the functionality of those mods I considered was replicated by immersive engineering and mechanism. Again, remember, immersive engineering and mechanism are my main tech mods. Anything that's effectively duplicative of those two is not going to be included. That includes the thermal series of mods. That includes Ender.io. And yes, it includes Tinker's Construct. I think a little bit more is required for that, because it's mostly tools that people use Tinker's Construct for. The thing is, I consider that Tinker's Construct is a little overpowered in its current state, to the extent that once I have Tinker's tools, it's going to be very difficult to justify using any other tool, really. And that makes it overpowered relative to pretty much every other stage in the game, which is why I excluded it. On the magic side, I am aware of Astral Sorcery. The last time I used it, it was, to put it politely, a little more trouble than it was worth. So I'm not using it here. I did briefly look into better with mods, but again, there's nothing it did that's not done just as well by the combination of immersive engineering and mechanism. Alright, that concludes the discussion of the challenge and the mod pack, and I will see you in episode 1 of Industria Australis. See you next time, everybody!